Good morning, and welcome to today's episode of this week's episode of Breathe, our video devotional series that is a companion piece to our 8-week summer sermon series entitled Breathe, Life in the Spirit According to Jesus. Now, when you think about the word quenched, I'm pretty sure the scene behind me and what you can hear behind me is probably one of the first things that comes to mind. We think about water. If you've been out in the yard working or if you've been out running, you think, man, if I could just get a nice tall glass of water, my thirst will be quenched. Exactly. There's a physical need for something to be filled, and a lot of times only water can do that. But quench also has another connotation to it. When we see Jesus talking about, we see Paul say, do not quench the spirit. And that's a quenching, that's a suppression, that's an ending. When you think about putting out a fire, that's the first thing you come to mind. It's like, I need to quench this fire. We need to put out this fire. So that means for you and I, there's two quenchings that we have to be concerned about. In John 7, which is where we were this past Sunday with the sermon, John 7, verses 37 through 39, Jesus says about this quenching, about this spirit. He says, this will become something that will be rivers. It will become rivers of living water flowing out of the heart and of the believers. What he's saying, that rivers of living water will flow out of the heart of the believer. And also John 4 and John 6 also have this thirsting sort of imagery. He tells the woman at the well that anyone who drinks the water that I give will never thirst again. He says it will become a fountain of water springing up in them. He also says, anyone who drinks this water, again, anyone who drinks this water that I give will never thirst. In another chapter in John, also in Matthew, he talks about anyone who hungers and thirsts for righteousness shall be filled. So that we see Jesus keep talking about this need, this thirst that we have apparently, and it can only be quenched by the Holy Spirit. In the verse 39 in the book of John chapter 7, it goes on to say that he was talking about the Holy Spirit, which they had not yet received. So you and I have two places I think that we should be imploring or asking the Holy Spirit to help us in as it pertains to quenching. The first thing that I think is important for us to ask the Holy Spirit, for us to quench anything in us that's not like him. Are we carrying anger? Are we carrying jealousy? Are we harboring animosity toward anyone? Are we hurting? Are we fearful? Any of those things are things that we need to ask the Holy Spirit to quench because they're dangerous. Just like fire has to be put out. Those things have to be put out. Those are things that are just not of God, and they're not things that we should be carrying as Christians, as believers, as people who are embodied with the very Spirit of God. We don't have to carry those things around. And on the other side, there are things that we should be asking the Holy Spirit to quench that are not, they're those thirsts that we have. Thirsting for peace, thirsting for righteousness, thirsting to walk in holiness, thirsting to love our family, our friends, our neighbors, our community more, thirsting to know more of God. Those are the things that we ask God to fill or fulfill. Those are not things that come to be quenched or suppressed. Those are things that we have to ask God to fill. And Jesus says, if you get this, it will be quenched. Your thirst will be quenched. The things that you are seeking after will be quenched. And if the things that we're seeking after are not of God, those things will be put out. But if the things that we are seeking are after God, they will be filled. We will have those things filled in us, and we will, again, I love the imagery in John when he says it will be like rivers of water, rivers of living water flowing out of the heart of the believer. You know what that says to me, what it says to us? Anything that's flowing out of us is not for us. Anything that's flowing out of us is for everyone around us. So as God fills us, as he quenches us, as these fountains begin to bubble up into us into everlasting life, as these rivers of living water begin to flow out of us, then we should have the ability to quench what other people around us may potentially need, that God would use us to do that very thing. He would use us to quench maybe something that's going on around us, something that we see a need for in our families, in our communities, in our churches, wherever it may be. Listen, thank you so much for joining us today. Come join us this Sunday. We will be talking about being filled by the Spirit. Not we, Tim. We'll be preaching on being filled by the Spirit. 11 o'clock online, Facebook or YouTube, or you know what's even better? Come sit with us in the sanctuary. Come be amongst the Cannon family. Enjoy the fellowship, enjoy the camaraderie, and we'll see you hopefully either online 11 o'clock Sunday for Filled by the Spirit, YouTube or Facebook, or we'll see you in person in the sanctuary. Have a great weekend.